Thinking about safety. Why is safety important in the technology lab? Before you begin your first hands-on activity, stop and think seriously about safety. Equipment, tools, materials, and activities determine the dangers of a particular situation. Accidents usually occur because people are not aware of the dangers that exist around them. You can avoid accidents just by paying careful attention to what you are doing. Another way is to develop a safe attitude. That means keeping safety in mind as you work. The color red identifies fire protection equipment, containers of flammable liquid, and fire exit sign. There are different colors associated with safety, and the color red usually signifies fire protection. The color orange identifies dangerous parts of machines inside movable guards, which may cut, crush, or shock or injure you. You might see an orange sign warning you to watch your hands and fingers because there might be movable movable rollers. The color yellow or yellow with stripes identifies physical hazard where you should use caution. So you usually see these when they're trying to warn you of caution. There's a danger high voltage sign and a watch your step sign. That's what the color yellow means, or yellow with bright stripe. The color green identifies where safety equipment like first aid kits can be found. So color green is associated with safety. It could be an exit, emergency shower, or an assembly point for situations where there's an emergency. The color purple identifies radiation hazards. So if you ever see purple, it means that there's radiation nearby. This is something you might see at a nuclear plant. The do's and don'ts of lab safety. What dangers should you avoid to prevent injury? First of all, using common sense and following some simple safety rules will make your experience in the lab a very enjoyable one. Here are a few basic rules. Protect your eyes by wearing proper protection. Wear a protective apron and roll up your sleeve. Never use equipment, tools, or materials unless your teacher has approved their use. Never plug in or turn on an electrical device without your teacher's permission. Inform your teacher if you are injured. Also, inform your teacher if you find any broken, dull, or damaged tools or equipment. So if you have a dull saw blade or a broken piece of equipment, you need to let me know or the teacher know that your equipment is not properly working. Most injuries occur because people don't think about what they are doing. Instead, they touch a material that could be hot without wearing heat-resistant non-asbestos gloves, or they touch spinning rollers, which cause their fingers to be pulled into the machine. Another word of warning, too, is if you don't have your hair tied back and you have a piece of machinery with spinning rollers, it can catch your hair and pull your hair into the machinery. Rest their fingers in areas where they can be pinched. Use chemicals without wearing the proper eye clothing protection. You definitely want to wear eye protection, clothing protection if you're using chemicals. Wear loose clothing and jewelry around machines that can grab them. Something else you don't want to do. You also don't want to use electrical tools with broken wires or insulation because they might shock you. Also, don't use tools that should be plugged into a three-prong plug in non-grounded wall outlets or extension cords. And what does that mean? If you have a three-prong plug, don't try to plug it into a two-prong plug. That was the definite no-no. What causes most hand tool accidents? Well, here are some important reminders for using hand tools. Never use a tool to perform a job unless the tool was designed to do that job. So you wouldn't use a hammer to do the job of a screwdriver or vice versa, using a screwdriver to hammer something in. That could be problematic and you might injure yourself. Always cut away from yourself, never cut towards you. Most accidents with hand tools happen because people cut towards themselves. You always want to cut away from yourself. Make sure your tools are sharp. A dull kitchen knife is more dangerous, or a dull tool is more dangerous than a sharp one because you often need force with the dull tool, which makes it more likely to slip. Never use broken tools or tools without proper handles. So if you have like a saw with a damaged handle, you definitely don't want to use it. What safety precautions should you take when using machines? The machines in your technology lab are not toys. They shouldn't be handled that way. They are designed to process materials. They cut, bend, reshape what goes into them. You don't want to have your hand bent, smashed, or cut. To avoid any chance of injury when working with machines, keep the following rules in mind at all times. Stay out of the safety area that surrounds a machine unless you are the person operating it. And never use any machine until your teacher has shown you how to operate it. And on a session by session basis, never use a machine until your teacher has granted you permission. This will protect you from using a machine that has been damaged since the last time you entered the room. So an example of this would be, let's say that a student was using the bandsaw in the shop, and in the sixth grade class, somebody accidentally broke the bandsaw, and then the seventh grade class came in, and someone automatically went to the bandsaw and tried to use it, and they got injured because the machine was not working properly. Always on a session by session or a class by class basis, make sure that you have your teacher's permission to use the tool. And make certain that other people are clear of the machine before you start working on any machine. Work alone. Don't have anybody in your area while you're working on something, but you definitely want to have someone nearby in case you get hurt. So the importance there is be mindful of personal space. Wear safety goggles. Watch what you're doing. Don't rush. Avoid talking and concentrate. People talking while they're operating tools get into trouble because they get distracted, and distractions can create injuries. Shut down the machine and request your teacher's assistance if you're having any difficulties. Never walk away from a machine that is running. You always want to turn it off before you leave the machine. These are just a few good tips as far as being safe with technology in the technology lab and with tools in the shop. But keep these tips in mind when you're working.